The industrial planet of Vorth stretched like a world of fire and stone. Its skies glowed with the reflection of molten metal flowing through massive forges. Great towers of smoke rose from the surface, twisting in patterns like living creatures. The planet was alive with the hum of creation, alien species competing, building, forging, and crafting weapons and tools from the rarest metals in the galaxy, the Zirans. Tall and crystalline, shaped light itself into solid blades that glimmered in every color imaginable. The Tarkians, massive and muscle-bound, could heat metals hotter than the heart of the sun and mold them with bare hands. The Lumari, elegant and almost ethereal, etched runes into their creations, embedding them with energy that could slice through mountains or mend the gravest of wounds. Each species had mastered a craft unique to their strengths, and each thought themselves unrivaled. Into this world of titans stepped a human girl named Lyra. She was small, her frame delicate compared to the hulking Tarkians or the towering Zirans. Her hair, chestnut brown, was tied back in a simple braid. Her clothes were plain and patched from travel. She carried nothing but a small satchel containing a single bone fragment she had found on Earth. The fragment was old, weathered, and seemed ordinary. To anyone else, it was nothing more than a piece of history. To Lyra, it was a puzzle, a tool, and a possibility all in one. When Lyra first stepped onto Vorth's main forge plateau, the other forgers laughed. Their voices rang across the metal towers, high and harsh. "Is that human?" a Lumari whispered, her voice like tinkling chimes. "She carries no tools." A Tarkian boomed, shaking his massive fists. "What can she do?" "Nothing." Even the Zirans tilted their crystalline heads, curiosity mixed with disbelief. None had ever seen a human attempt forging on Vorth. Humans were not known for strength, nor for mastery over extreme environments. Most thought of Earth's species as weak and fragile, barely surviving in their home world. Lyra ignored the whispers. She walked toward a quiet corner of the forge plateau, away from the roaring fires and molten rivers. Here, she could think, observe, and prepare. Her eyes scanned the massive workshops, the alien forges, and the weapons that glowed with unimaginable power. The Tarkians' hammers fell with such force that sparks flew like tiny stars. The Zirans' blades shimmered in the air as if light itself were liquid. The Lumari chanted softly, and the runes in their weapons pulsed with silent energy. Lyra watched everything, learning without touching a single tool. She understood patterns, timing, and the rhythm of creation. Finally, she knelt beside her small bone fragment. It felt warm under her fingertips, like it remembered the life it had once held. Lyra ran her thumb along its curves and edges. She could feel the grain of the bone, the subtle lines that could guide how it might be sharpened and shaped. Where the aliens saw a simple material, she saw possibilities. "Why waste your time?" A Ziran called, its voice like glass scraping against metal. "That is not a weapon. That is nothing." Lyra looked up at him, her eyes calm. "Everything starts as nothing," she said softly. "You just don't see it yet." The alien's laugh was sharp, cutting, and filled with scorn. Yet, some of the other forgers paused, even among the proud species of Vorth. Curiosity could not be fully hidden. Days passed, and the other forgers continued their work. Lyra stayed in her quiet corner, sharpening the bone, sanding it, and testing it against small stones to understand its limits. Slowly, a faint edge began to form, sharper than a knife, smoother than most of the metals she had seen dot at night. When the forges dimmed and the alien workers retreated to their living quarters, Lyra experimented further. She tapped the bone lightly, listening to the sound it made. She tested its balance in her hands, feeling how it moved naturally, almost as if it wanted to follow her commands. Meanwhile, the Council of Masters prepared an announcement that would shake Vorth. Every species had been invited to the Grand Forge Tournament, a competition held once every 50 cycles. The best of the best would present their creations, not only to compete for honor, but to be recognized across the galaxy. The tournament was feared, respected, and unmatched in prestige. When the announcement came, the Forge Plateau erupted with excitement and tension. Sparks flew higher, fires burned brighter, and alien voices rang across the sky. Lyra listened quietly, as the other species boasted of their weapons. "We will win, as always," a Tarkian said, flexing his massive arms. "No one can match my hammer strikes. No one. Our blades are eternal," Azerin added, its light-bent weapons casting rainbow reflections across the forged towers. Lyra said nothing. She did not need to. She knew she was different, and that difference was her strength. The aliens continued their work with furious intensity. Hammers fell, furnaces roared, and the sky seemed to vibrate with energy. Lyra, in her corner, touched the bone fragment and smiled. She did not need to melt the hardest metals. She did not need to bend light or chant runes. She only needed to understand what the bone could do and to trust herself. The day before the tournament, a young Lumari approached her. "You are brave, human," the Lumari said softly, "or foolish. I cannot tell which. None of us has seen someone work with that." Lyra smiled. "Maybe it is both. Maybe it is neither. We will see tomorrow." The Lumari tilted her head, intrigued. For the first time, she saw not a weak human, but someone who thought differently, someone who could see strength in what others overlooked. As night fell, Lyra prepared her workbench, simple tools, a cloth for polishing, and her bone fragment. She slept lightly, dreaming of possibilities in her dreams. The bone glimmered with light, sharper than any metal, moving faster than any sword. The next morning, the forged plateau was alive with tension. The Council of Masters watched from their high podiums, their eyes scanning the competitors. Aliens displayed their weapons with pride. Glowing blades, hammers that could crush stone, staffs etched with pulsing runes. The crowd gasped, clapped, and cheered at the sheer magnificence of each creation. When Lyra stepped forward, some gasped not at her weapon, but at her size. She looked small, fragile even, compared to the massive warriors who towered above her. Her bone fragment was small in her hand, almost delicate. The laughter started almost immediately. "She carries a stick," a Tarkian bellowed. "This is a tournament of masters, not children." Lyra raised her chin. She did not falter. The bone fragment felt alive in her hands, an extension of herself. She turned it over, feeling the balance, the sharpness, the possibilities. A hush began to fall over the crowd as she moved with careful precision. She was not swinging wildly. She was not relying on strength or speed alone. She was demonstrating control, understanding, and insight. For the first time, some aliens began to pay attention. Perhaps, they thought, humans are not just fragile creatures, they are clever, patient, and precise. Perhaps there was something to learn from them. The first spark of doubt flickered among the alien forgers, and Lyra, small human girl though she was, smiled quietly to herself. Tomorrow, the tournament would begin, and tomorrow, the galaxy would begin to understand that humans are not like the others. They see the world differently, and that difference could be more powerful than all the metals, runes, and fire in the universe. The sun rose over Vorth, casting a golden-orange glow across the forged plateau. The morning air was thick with heat, smoke, and the scent of molten metal. Today, the Grand Forge tournament would begin. Competitors from countless species gathered, each proud and confident, their weapons ready for display and battle. Lyra stood at the edge of the crowd, holding her small bone fragment, her fingers tracing its edges. It was simple, yet in her hands it felt alive, humming with potential. The Council of Masters, seated high on a gleaming podium, announced the rules. Each participant would demonstrate the power, balance, and creativity of their weapon in 3 trials: strength, precision, and adaptability. The first trial tested raw power. Sparks flew and engines roared as massive weapons clashed in demonstrations of might. The Tarkians went first. A hulking warrior lifted a hammer large enough to crush a house. He slammed it down onto a reinforced metal slab. The impact was so strong that the air shook and the ground trembled. The crowd cheered. Then Azerin stepped forward. They held a blade of pure light, swinging it with grace and speed. Each strike cut through metal and stone effortlessly. The Lumari followed, chanting as their staffs glowed with runes that seemed to dance in the air, slicing energy into solid forms. The other species watched in awe, their creations dazzling and powerful. When Lyra stepped forward, a hush fell over the plateau. Some aliens shook their heads in disbelief. She was tiny, almost fragile, holding nothing more than a small bone fragment. The crowd snickered and whispered, "Is she serious?" A Tarkian growled, flexing his enormous arms. "She must be joking," a Xeran muttered. Tilting its crystalline head, Lyra ignored them. She knelt briefly, feeling the balance of the bone fragment in her hands. Then she moved forward with careful precision. She did not swing wildly or rely on brute strength. Instead, she tapped the fragment gently on a small stone target. The tip caught the light, flashing like lightning. It sank into the target with a sharp, clean strike. Then she flicked it sideways, deflecting a small metal projectile midair. Each movement was controlled, deliberate, and efficient. The crowd fell silent. The aliens could not understand what they were seeing. A small human girl, with a simple bone fragment, was outperforming some weapons that cost more than entire planets to forge. The judges leaned forward, intrigued despite themselves. The first trial ended. Lyra had passed without brute force. Her weapon was small, but it worked perfectly. Even the Tarkians, who prided themselves on strength, had to acknowledge her skill. The second trial was precision. Participants had to hit targets at varying distances and angles, some moving, some stationary. The aliens were confident. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. The Xeran's blades cut through distant targets with light-like speed. The Tarkians' hammers struck exactly where they intended, smashing through obstacles. The Lumari chanted, their energy-infused weapons piercing the most delicate targets flawlessly. Lyra stepped forward again. She raised the bone fragment, feeling its natural grain. Unlike metal, bone had subtle curves and a unique weight. It responded to her touch. She focused, watching the spinning targets ahead. With a flick of her wrist, the fragment struck the first moving target, embedding itself with a clean precision no alien blade could match. She moved swiftly, striking each target in turn. The bone felt as though it anticipated her movements. Gasps echoed across the forge plateau. Competitors whispered, some in disbelief, some in awe. A few younger aliens leaned forward, curiosity and admiration in their eyes. Humans were different. They were clever, adaptable, and their tools seemed to follow their minds rather than their muscle. The final trial was adaptability. Participants faced a shifting battlefield filled with obstacles, moving machinery, and unpredictable attacks from automated drones. This trial was designed to test not only the weapon, but the user's creativity and quick thinking. The aliens were confident. After all, their species had survived centuries of competitive forging and battle. Lyra stepped forward into the chaos. The bone fragment felt light in her hands, yet stronger than it appeared. A small drone lunged toward her, metal claws swinging. Lyra ducked, tapping the fragment against its wing joint. Sparks flew as the drone toppled to the ground. Another drone approached, faster and heavier. She pivoted, striking it with a precise motion. Redirecting its energy away from herself and other participants, the alien masters watched, stunned. No one had expected a human to move with such speed, control, and creativity. Lyra's movements were not the result of raw power, they were the result of observation, patience, and understanding. Even the Tarkians, known for brute force, could not keep up. Even the Xerans, masters of light and precision, were slow compared to her reflexes. The crowd could no longer ignore her. Whispers grew into murmurs, and murmurs into excited chatter. By the end of the trial, Lyra had not only survived but had outperformed expectations. She moved through the obstacles with grace, using the bone fragment as if it were part of her body. Her weapon was small, yet it had proven its worth in fire, precision, and adaptability. After the trials, competitors gathered, exhausted and sweating. The aliens who had mocked her in the beginning now looked at her with a mixture of respect and confusion. A young Lumari approached Lyra once more. Your weapon," she said softly. "It is unlike anything I have ever seen." How does it work?" Lyra smiled faintly. "It is simple," she replied. "You see possibilities where others see limitations. That is all. The Lumari tilted her head, understanding the meaning. Humans were not the strongest or the largest, yet their creativity and ingenuity made them unpredictable and powerful. Back in her corner of the forge, Lyra polished her bone fragment, feeling its edges and curves. She was calm, focused, and ready. She knew that the tournament was far from over. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, tougher competitors, and unexpected tests. But she also knew something else. Humans had a way of turning the impossible into reality. That night, Lyra slept lightly, listening to the distant hum of the furnaces. In her dreams, the bone fragment glowed softly, sharper, and faster than any metal. She dreamed of movements, attacks, and defenses that were not yet possible, but she could make them real. The next morning, the forge plateau was alive again, buzzing with excitement. The aliens polished their weapons, checking every edge and rune. They were proud, confident, and a little nervous. Whispers of the human girl had spread. Everyone knew she had passed the trials, but no one could predict what she might do next. Lyra approached the central arena, her heart steady, her mind calm. She looked at her competitors and the massive weapons they carried. None of it intimidated her. She did not need to match them in size or raw power. She only needed to understand herself, her weapon, and the possibilities hidden in the simplest things. The Council of Masters watched carefully. Some of them frowned, unwilling to admit a human could rival their greatest forgers. Others leaned forward, intrigued by the demonstration of ingenuity and precision. Lyra raised her bone fragment, letting the sun catch its edges. In that moment, the crowd fell silent. They were waiting, watching, unsure of what would come next. And in that silence, Lyra felt a quiet confidence grow within her. She was not just a human on an alien world, she was someone who could change the way others saw creation, strength, and possibility. The tournament was only beginning, but already the galaxy had begun to notice a simple truth. Humans are not the largest, the strongest, or the most powerful, but they are clever, adaptable, and capable of seeing what others cannot. And sometimes that is more important than any metal, rune, or fire. As Lyra prepared for the next stage, she touched her bone fragment one last time. It hummed softly, warm and ready. She smiled. Tomorrow, she would show them all what a human could do with a single fragment of bone, sharpened and shaped with care, patience, and imagination. The night sky over Vorth sparkled with stars, as if the universe itself were watching, waiting to see the small human girl take her place among giants. The sun rose slowly over Vorth, casting long, molten gold shadows across the forge plateau. The air smelled of heated metal and scorched stone. Today was the combat phase of the Grand Forge Tournament, the moment when every creation would be tested not only for design and precision, but for actual battle. The crowd gathered around the central arena. The massive metal gates creaked open, revealing the competitors' weapons, displayed proudly on pedestals. Towering Tarkian hammers, shimmering Xeran blades, rune-covered Lumari staffs all gleamed under the light, promising destruction. And in the middle, small and unassuming, lay Lyra's bone fragment. Whispers traveled through the crowd. That human really thinks she can compete? One Tarkian growled, flexing his enormous arms. She carries nothing but a piece of bone, a Xeran whispered, its voice sharp as crystal. Even some of the younger Lumari shook their heads in disbelief. But a quiet curiosity lingered in the air. Lyra's previous trials had left everyone uneasy. The human had not only survived, they had excelled. And now, she would step into combat. Lyra approached the arena, bone fragment in hand. She felt calm, focused. The fragment seemed to hum softly, responding to her touch. To the others, it looked fragile. But Lyra knew its strength came not from size or weight, but from understanding and precision. The first match was against a Tarkian champion. The Tarkian roared, swinging a hammer the size of a small building. The ground trembled with each strike. Sparks flew, and molten dust rained down around them. Lyra sidestepped with nimble grace, barely a flicker in the massive shadow of the Tarkian's hammer. She tapped the bone fragment against the ground, deflecting smaller projectiles the hammer generated. Then, with a precise strike. She aimed for the Tarkian's joints. The fragment struck with such accuracy that the Tarkian staggered, unbalanced, unable to land a direct blow. The crowd gasped. A human, tiny and fragile, had moved with speed, precision, and cleverness that dwarfed brute strength. The Tarkian roared in frustration, swinging harder. But each attack was anticipated, each move encountered. Finally, Lyra used her momentum, tapping the bone fragment against the Tarkian's massive forearm. The strike was light, but it exploited the leverage perfectly. The Tarkian stumbled, nearly falling, and the judges signaled the match was over. Lyra had won. Murmurs spread like wildfire. Some aliens refused to believe it. Others, younger and more open-minded, began to whisper about humans in a new light. The next opponent was a Xeran, master of light blades. The crystalline alien moved like liquid, its weapon flashing in multiple colors as it struck. Lyra watched, analyzing the patterns of attack. She did not panic. Instead, she allowed the Xeran to overextend, dodging with small, quick movements. Then, she struck. The bone fragment, light yet impossibly strong, blocked and deflected. Moving with speed the Xeran's blade could not match, sparks flew as light met bone. The Xeran tried to push back, swinging faster, but Lyra anticipated, tapping at weak points with precise accuracy. With one calculated flick, she disarmed the Xeran, sending the crystal blade spinning across the arena. The crowd erupted into astonished applause. Even the judges had to step back. Never had they seen a human demonstrate such cunning, creativity, and skill. Lyra's victory was not about strength, it was about perception, adaptability, and intelligence. The final opponent for this phase was a Lumari. The alien staff glowed with runes, pulsing with energy that could slice through solid stone. The Lumari moved gracefully, striking in patterns that seemed impossible to predict. Lyra's eyes narrowed. She knew she could not match energy with energy. She had to find a way to use the bone fragment strengths. The Lumari's first strike sent a wave of energy toward Lyra. She ducked, rolling to the side. The bone fragment vibrated slightly, almost guiding her hand. She tapped the staff's shaft, redirecting the energy safely away. Another strike came, faster and stronger. Lyra blocked it with the bone, then spun, using the staff's own momentum to knock the alien off balance. The crowd gasped again. The human girl was using not power, but ingenuity, turning the opponent's energy against them. The Lumari tried to retreat, strike again, but every movement was predicted. With a final flick, Lyra disarmed the Lumari, sending the glowing staff skidding across the arena. The arena erupted in astonishment. The alien masters whispered among themselves, how could a human, so small and untrained in their ways, defeat the finest forgers of Vorth? Lyra stood in the center, breathing steadily. The bone fragment glimmered faintly in her hand, sharpened and perfected. She felt a quiet pride, but no arrogance. She had done what she came to do, show that strength alone does not define a warrior. Observation, patience, and understanding can be stronger than any metal or rune dot. As the combat phase ended, the Council of Masters convened. Their discussion was hushed, but their expressions revealed a mix of confusion, concern, and awe. One elder Tarkian spoke, his deep voice rumbling across the chamber. This human, she has proven something we cannot ignore. Her weapon is small, yet effective. Her mind is different, dangerous in its own way. A Xeran elder added, she is clever. Not the strongest, not the fastest, but her perception, it is unmatched. We must observe carefully. Lyra returned to her quiet corner after the matches. She polished the bone fragment carefully, feeling its edges, testing its balance. Even though she had won, she knew the hardest trials were yet to come. The final rounds would push not only the weapon, but the user, to limits they could scarcely imagine. That night, Vorth's skies were alight with distant auroras, reflections of the molten forges below. Lyra lay on a simple mat, gazing at the stars through a break in the forge towers. She thought of Earth, of her home world, and of the bone fragment she had carried all this way. It had seemed insignificant once, Yet now it had proven itself in ways even the galaxy's strongest could not match. Dreams filled her sleep, visions of moving targets, shifting obstacles, and opponents more cunning than any she had faced. In each dream, the bone fragment glowed with a soft light, responding to her thoughts and instincts. She woke with the same quiet determination that had guided her from the beginning. The next day, the tournament entered its final phase, a combination of all trials, including strategy, adaptability, and teamwork. This round would challenge every participant's limits. It was here that the aliens hoped to separate the strongest from the merely talented, and for Lyra, it was the stage, where humans might show the galaxy that cleverness and insight can surpass raw power. As the arena gates opened, competitors marched forward, each weapon gleaming with deadly promise. Lyra stepped carefully, the bone fragment light in her hand but full of potential. She observed the other participants, noting their strengths, weaknesses, and habits. Even the youngest aliens in the audience sensed the tension. For the first time, some began to whisper not just about her skill, but about humanity itself. Humans, maybe they are not weak. A young Lumari murmured, maybe we have underestimated them all along. Lyra did not hear them. She did not need to. Her focus was complete. Every strike, every movement, every strategy she would use was already in her mind. She trusted the bone fragment as an extension of herself. The stage was set. The final round would begin, and the galaxy would soon see a small human girl, armed with nothing more than a sharpened fragment of bone, show the universe that creativity, intelligence, and courage can be more powerful than size, strength, or fire. And as the gates closed, behind the other competitors, Lyra's calm smile was the only certainty in a world filled with giants. The battle of perception versus strength was about to begin. The forged plateau of Vorth was alive with anticipation. Today was the final day of the Grand Forge tournament, the day when champions would be crowned. Competitors from every species stood ready, weapons gleaming, muscles tensed, and minds sharp. The air was thick with heat, excitement, and tension. Lyra stood at the edge of the arena, holding her small bone fragment. To anyone else, it seemed insignificant, a tiny piece of bone, light and fragile. But in Lyra's hands, it was perfect. It had survived every trial, every test of strength, precision, and adaptability. And today, it would face the final challenge, the Gauntlet of Masters. A series of unpredictable obstacles, combat scenarios, and skill trials designed to push even the best to their limits. The Council of Masters, seated high on their podium, announced the rules. Competitors, one elder Tarkian began. Today you will face not only each other, but the challenges set by the Council. Only those who can adapt, think, and overcome will succeed. Strength alone will not win. Skill, strategy, and understanding are required. Lyra nodded quietly to herself. Strength alone had never been her plan. She relied on observation, creativity, and precision. The bone fragment in her hand felt warm and steady, almost as if it knew the path ahead. The first stage of the gauntlet was the labyrinth of trials, a massive maze filled with moving walls, traps, and obstacles. The other competitors relied on their size, power, and weapons to smash or cut through obstacles. Lyra, however, moved carefully, studying the patterns. She tapped the bone fragment against walls and floors, testing vibrations, sensing weak points, and finding hidden paths. Where others struggled or became trapped, Lyra moved with quiet confidence, turning what seemed impossible into a path forward. The crowd watched in awe as the small human darted through the labyrinth, while the largest Tarkian struggled to navigate simple passages. Sparks flew from collapsing walls, energy barriers hummed with danger. And yet Lyra's bone fragment never failed her. It deflected, absorbed, and guided her movements, allowing her to survive and advance. Next came the arena of combat, where competitors faced each other directly in battle. Massive weapons clashed, sending shock waves through the ground. Lyra faced a Zirin with a blade of solid light, radiant and deadly. The alien swung with precision and speed, expecting to overwhelm any human opponent easily. But Lyra did not fight with strength. She moved lightly, her bone fragment deflecting strikes with careful taps, guiding the Zirn's momentum away from herself. Each motion was deliberate, calculated, and efficient. She used the opponent's energy against them, dodging, redirecting, and striking with pinpoint accuracy. The crowd gasped repeatedly. Aliens who had mocked humans now whispered among themselves in disbelief. She uses strategy, not power. One Lumari exclaimed. Her moves are unlike anything we have seen. Lyra disarmed the Zirn with a clever flick, sending the glowing blade spinning across the arena. The alien fell to their knees, astonished and defeated. Lyra stood quietly, calm as ever, the bone fragment glowing faintly in her hand. The final challenge was the Council's trial, the most unpredictable of all. Competitors faced a series of obstacles that tested everything: strength, speed, intelligence, and creativity. Fire pits, moving platforms, energy barriers, and hidden traps filled the course. Many of the alien competitors relied on brute force or magical runes to survive, but these methods often backfired. The platforms collapsed under their weight, energy barriers deflected their attacks, and some even triggered traps that sent them tumbling into pits. Lyra approached the course with quiet confidence. She observed each obstacle, testing the bone fragment's reactions, sensing the weak points, and calculating the best approach. She did not panic. She did not rush. Step by step, she moved through the course, her small human frame allowing her to slip through spaces too tight for even the smallest Zirns. She avoided falling traps and deflected energy barriers with delicate taps. When she reached the final stage, a massive mechanical guardian waited. It was a towering construct of metal and energy, built to test the limits of the strongest warriors. It swung massive arms, shot energy pulses, and moved with unpredictable speed. Most of the aliens hesitated, fearing even to engage. Lyra stepped forward. She did not rely on strength. She relied on ingenuity. She observed the Guardian, noting the rhythm of its attacks. She moved quickly, lightly, and used the bone fragment to strike precise points, joints, hinges, and sensors. Each tap disrupted the Guardian's movements, slowing it down, redirecting its attacks, and creating openings. The crowd watched, wide-eyed. No one expected a human to take on such a construct with nothing but a small fragment of bone. Yet step by step, Lyra disabled the Guardian. With a final flick, she struck the central core, and the mechanical giant powered down with a heavy thud. Silence filled the arena. The judges and Council of Masters rose from their seats, faces a mixture of awe and disbelief. Lyra had completed the gauntlet of masters. She had outsmarted, outmaneuvered, and outperformed every competitor, not through strength, not through size, not through magic or energy, but through intelligence, observation, and precision. A Tarkian elder stepped forward, his deep voice trembling slightly. This human, she has done what none of us believed possible. She has overcome trials that many of our strongest warriors could not. She has proven that strength is not the only measure of greatness, a Zirn elder added. Her ingenuity, patience, and understanding of materials, it surpasses expectations. She has shown us that humans are not to be underestimated. Lyra stepped forward, bone fragment in hand, and bowed respectfully to the council. She did not boast. She did not gloat. She had only done what she came to do, show that creativity, courage, and intelligence can surpass brute force. The audience erupted into applause, a wave of admiration and respect sweeping across the forged plateau. Competitors who had mocked her now approached, offering nods of acknowledgement. The youngest aliens looked at her with awe, inspired by what one small human could achieve. Later, as the Council of Masters conferred, they decided unanimously. Lyra was declared champion of the Grand Forge tournament. Her victory was historic, not only because of her skill, but because it redefined what it meant to be a warrior and a forger in the galaxy. Lyra returned to her corner, sitting quietly as other competitors congratulated her. Her bone fragment, now sharpened and gleaming, seemed almost alive in her hand. She smiled softly, thinking of Earth, of her home, and of the fragment she had carried all this way. It had seemed ordinary once, but it had become extraordinary through care, observation, and creativity. The galaxy had seen humans as small and weak. Today, Lyra had proven them wrong. Humans were not the largest, not the strongest, not the most magical. But humans could see possibilities where others saw limits. They could adapt, create, and overcome in ways no other species could match. That evening, Vorth's skies glowed with auroras, reflecting the fires of the forges below. Lyra stood on a balcony overlooking the plateau, her bone fragment in hand. Competitors from other worlds approached her, not with envy, but with curiosity and respect. "Tell us," a young Lumari asked, "how did you do it? How did you turn a simple piece of bone into a weapon that can defeat the greatest warriors of Vorth?" Lyra smiled quietly. "It is not the weapon," she replied. "It is the mind that wields it. You can have the strongest metal, the brightest light, the most powerful runes, but if you do not see the possibilities, if you do not adapt and understand, it is useless. Humans, we learn to see what others overlook. That is our strength." The young alien nodded, understanding dawning. Humans were clever, adaptable, and creative. They were unpredictable. They could survive, succeed, and thrive where others failed. Lyra looked out across the horizon, thinking of the stars beyond Vorth. She knew this was only the beginning. Humanity had entered the galaxy quietly, underestimated by most. But with patience, observation, and intelligence, they would leave their mark. The forged plateau of Vorth would remember her victory for centuries. The story of the human girl and her bone fragment would inspire generations. Not because she was the strongest, not because she wielded the largest weapon, but because she proved a truth no one could deny: humans are exceptional, in ways the galaxy has yet to fully understand. And as the night settled over Vorth, Lyra's eyes sparkled with quiet determination. She had begun a legacy of human ingenuity, courage, and adaptability. The galaxy had seen the power of one small human in a simple bone fragment, and it would never underestimate humanity again. Lyra held the bone fragment tightly, a symbol of her journey. It had started as nothing more than a piece of Earth's past, but through care, patience, and vision, it had become a weapon worthy of legends. And so had the human who wielded it. The story of Lyra, the human girl who sharpened a bone fragment when the galaxy forged metal, would echo through time. It was a reminder that strength is not always measured by size or firepower, but by creativity, courage, and the ability to see possibilities others cannot. The galaxy had learned a lesson it would never forget. Humans are extraordinary,